discussion. But happy Friday and welcome to Co-working and COVID-19. I want to first introduce Rasheeda Creighton, who is going to be facilitating and leading our discussion today. And she is going to take this opportunity to introduce our panelists.
Good morning. Thank you, Adrienne, and welcome everybody. We're so excited to have you all. As Adrienne said, I am Rasheeda Creighton, today's facilitator. I am the founder of the 350 Group, which is a consulting company that focuses on two areas. We partner with architects and developers who focus on co-working spaces to incorporate operational intent into the design process to ensure those spaces are the most effective for their users. The other thing that we do is we advocate for diversity and equity within the small business ecosystem. And I am excited because I serve on the advisory board for the Collaboratory. And so this was a great opportunity for us to partner with both of our business interests to talk about what is going on in these spaces in light of COVID. For those who may not be as familiar with the Collaboratory of Virginia was founded by Adrienne Wright, who you just heard from. Adrienne is the CEO and president of U-Turn, and her co-founder is Andrew Pagalis, who's the VP of Development at SL Nussbaum. The mission of the Collaboratory, or CVA, as you may hear us call it, is to create a place of collisions and community for nonprofits. The vision is ultimately to establish an ecosystem of nonprofit innovation, collaboration, and capacity building. In light of COVID, in light of all that is going on with COVID-19, we really thought it was important to talk about not just the conversations that we've been having within the CVA team and the advisory board about, how do we move forward? How do we continue with construction? But also, what actually does all of this mean for any co-working spaces that exist? And so that's really how we brought on. So we brought on some partners who are also working with CVA. We have Mike Bell, who is the founder and president of ML Bell Construction. We also have Susan Pilato, who is principal at PC&A Business Environments. And then we have Jessica Zullo, who's the associate principal at Hickok. Welcome. We are excited to have everybody here. A couple of housekeeping notes before we begin our panel discussion. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them throughout the panel. There is a button that you should see at the bottom for Q&A. You can submit your questions there. If you would like to submit it in the chat, you can do that as well. And if you don't necessarily want to be identified, you can submit your questions anonymously if you do a chat directly to Adrienne, who will show up as the Collaboratory of Virginia on your screen. So those are three ways. Use the Q&A. You can use the general chat button to everyone, or you can chat directly to Adrienne under the Collaboratory of Virginia, and we will answer the questions at the end, but please feel free to submit them throughout the panel. So with that, I think we will get started. So I've very briefly introduced you all, but if you would just take a moment to tell our audience here more about you, your role, and what your company does. Mike, let's start with you.
I'm Mike Bell. I'm president of ML Bell Construction. We're based in Richmond, Virginia. We've been in business since 2003. We are a design build commercial general contractor. We focus on a lot of market segments that include office, industrial, retail, healthcare, sports, and rec. We spend a lot of time working with designers, working with architects, really trying to refine the correct environment, which in today's environment is ever changing, and we look forward to the challenge. So thanks for having us.
Susan?
Yes, I'm Susan Pilato with PC&A Business Environments. We are based in Norfolk, but we have offices in Richmond and also Indianapolis. We are a solution-based company that we're owned by designers. I'm one of them. That provides commercial furniture in collaboration with the A&D community. We're happy to be here too. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. Jessica.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm an associate principal with Hickok Architects. We specialize primarily in office design, co-working, multifamily housing design, and hospitality design.
So thank you all. We have lots of things to talk about today, so I am not going to delay us and get started. One of the things that I wanted to start with, and Susan, I'd love to just start with you. COVID-19 brought a lot of us home very quickly and suddenly, and now we're seeing cities start to kind of move back into reopening. But in the course of that process, I've seen, and I'm sure you have too, a lot of questions about what does this mean for the future of co-working spaces, and are they really viable? Can you talk a little bit about how your work in this space has been impacted, and also what you're seeing and hearing from your peers and your clients?
Absolutely. So when COVID became such a real threat so quickly, um, to your point, the first goal was to get everyone home in order to be safe. It seemed we were learning by the hour how the spread was happening and what we needed to do to slow it down. Employees have been told that working from home has been the safest way to handle slowing the spread. So now the phasing is starting with bringing people back into the workplace. And the primary goal really is to create an environment that makes people feel safe. Adrian, if you could show image one. At CVA, the space is designed around flexibility, as is the furniture. And in case you get, is the slide showing yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. As you can see, this is some of the furniture that had already been specified for CVA, and we can make this space safe, with screens, with separation. The key is that the furniture is flexible. And everything that we plan for CVA is geared towards flexibility just because of the sense of what it is. It's a co-working space. So as you can see here, there's screens, there's separation of stations with storage units. So the relevance of co-working is still strong because people are going to want to collaborate again. Also, as we're bringing people back, the communication of calls is really, really important, such as hand sanitizing, wearing masks, one-way traffic patterns. We do this through visual cues. Clean doesn't have to be boring. Adrian, if you can show images 2, and then we'll go to 3. We've started to create some fun things. We call it the handstand, and this comes in different colors, and you can attach that hand automated dispenser to it. Also, if you can show the slide 3, we've also come up with some ideas of decals to make it more fun. So it's not like, hey, stay 6 feet apart. Remember, this is a visual cue that's a little softer and fun. So we don't have to be boring in what we're doing with making people feel safe and creating a path of way to come back and be together again.
Anybody else want to chime in on kind of some of the things that you're hearing and seeing? I know, Mike, you've still been you guys are essential, so you've been on the ground with the construction piece.
Yeah, as a essential business, we've been continuing to work and build our projects, which is nice because a lot of them are supporting food delivery, housing, some things that will really be important, even if we continue on a takeout mode or some of these other operations. I think the co-working space in general is going to become even more important because it provides advantages that typical offices don't have. It provides flexibility, it provides resources, it provides interaction. As far as current projects go and what we see and hear, as Susan said, the immediate goal was safety. So everything kind of got put on hold. Now in our current crisis, COVID, and the current challenges our country faces, I think there's a consumer confidence that's a little bit on hold, and I think projects are kind of pushing to Q4 and Q1 of 2021, which isn't a bad thing because it gives us more time for proper collaboration and proper design to meet our new changing environment.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So let's segue a little bit into that. And Jessica, I'm going to start with you for this one. There was an article in Forbes in April, in Forbes magazine, and they talked about the 3 reasons COVID-19 makes co-working spaces more important, which you just kind of alluded to. Their 3 reasons were: you need a home for remote workers, for those who may not necessarily be small business owners, but they are kind of, you've seen like Facebook and Google, or like people are working from home indefinitely, and you're seeing that happen. But not everybody can work from home productively or feasibly. The second reason was the resource coordination for small businesses. And then the third one was the community aspect of co-working spaces, which I think we should not lose sight of. Jessica, how do you see this? What is your thought on the impact of that? And how do you deliver for your clients?
Yeah, totally. So when we first opened our office in Richmond, we worked out of a co-working space. So this article totally resonated with me. And if you think about it, co-working is a little bit different than your traditional office space in that there are multiple people all coming together who may not abide by the same ground rules. So honestly, any space or activity that brings people together is facing disruption and being forced to pivot. And the effects of that will probably be long lasting. And there's so much information out there and research flowing around, and we're all learning more every day. But a study that I was reading last week stated that only 12% of the US workforce wants to work from home full time, and most people want to get back to the office. So in my experience, and what this article mentions too, are those 3 reasons why co-working spaces are more important now coming out of this pause than ever before. And Adrian, I had a slide just outlining these 3. The first one being resources for small businesses. And co-working provides a lifeline for small businesses, providing support for sole proprietors and self-employed people and other entrepreneurs. So right now, if you go back, there you go, that's perfect. For example, co-working operators right now are well positioned to help coordinate and direct assistance to small businesses through relief funds. They're just better connected and have relationships with a lot of local contacts, either through their members or they themselves personally. The second one, the home-based one, remote workers existed before, and they're going to exist after COVID-19. So large organizations who already had remote workers will probably add more remote workers. And not everybody's going to want to work from home forever. People are looking for additional access to technology, the ability to focus on their work. And both of those things are hard to do at home long term. So folks are going to be eager to work from somewhere else, even if they are remote. And then the last one, and probably the most important one, is community. And the post-COVID workplace really needs to be all about connecting people and creating community. And the shift towards work from home, I think, has crystallized the reasons why we all come to the office every day. And overwhelmingly, the responses from a lot of these surveys have been that people are really missing scheduled meetings with their colleagues or impromptu face-to-face discussions and socializing. So we're going to rely on these social networks more than ever to regain our footing when we all go back. And effective co-working spaces do just that. They're community hubs and essential sources of local connections, which is the key ingredient in rebounding. And for the Collaboratory specifically, the trend for involvement in nonprofits and volunteerism will continue to grow. So how can this building and community contribute to social impact? I think that is the question that our entire team is looking to answer.
I think that's really important. And like one of the things that as a Collaboratory has pivoted to kind of reshift how they're rolling out, right? We were initially going to start with the physical space, and that pivot to looking at the programming, which is really about the community, and even the launch of the Thrive Accelerator that they're doing now, I think is an example of how do you think about building that community before everybody is in a physical space together? Because that connectivity is what's going to bring you to the physical space later.
Right.
Susan, I thought I saw you.
Yeah, I just want to add, because, how often, I think we've all experienced this, and we talked about this the other day, about how, just running into somebody just by chance because you went up to use the restroom or grab a cup of coffee, and you're like, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And then an idea presents itself and it just starts building and it becomes so important to one's business plan or, a connection or, connecting how we can work together, especially with nonprofits. It's so important for them to, collaborate together and see how they, instead of working in silos, working together. So, I feel like we're really missing out right now. I'm feeling that way. It's like, just it's great having these Zoom meetings and all that, but having that personal, like, oh yeah, right, I need to talk to you. It's hard to do that on Zoom, to kind of run into somebody on a Zoom call.
Right.
And there's energy that you kind of lose. I shared with you guys the other day, I picked up a coffee and some lunch from Urban Hang Suite, which is
Yeah.
kind of my hangout spot, because I'm early in the entrepreneur range. And so I used to go there once a week and just like spend the whole day there. And as I drove just the path to get over there, I was like, man, like I felt the energy, even like just internally. It was like this physical reaction that I was like, I really miss this. Like I miss the staff over there. I miss all the people I run into and just the seemingly random connections that have actually resulted in some great business connections for me. So I completely understand that.
Rasheeda, some interesting things, and Jessica alluded to the Gensler study about working from home. And prior to COVID, only 1 in 10 people worked from home. So now we enter into COVID, and you hear Facebook and Google and all these companies saying, we're not coming back until January. The reality is 88% of people want to come back. They want that interaction, they want that energy. And people want to come back, they just want to feel comfortable doing it. And that might be a combination of more space, stricter regulations on sick time, better cleaning. But people need that. And it's interesting to look at generationally, because you would think the millennials and the Gen X, which are the future of our workforce, have a leg up because they're technology. But the studies show that they have a harder time working from home. Not only because they want the interaction, they collaborate better in person. They're also not set up like some of the older, more experienced people who might have a home office or something like that. I have a family member who has a studio in DC. He's an attorney. Okay, so him and his girlfriend are both working from their studio. So the bed is the kitchen table, the bed, the office, and they take time switching out in the closet to be able to do Zoom calls.
Wow.
It's challenging for them, where the older generations feel more accomplished doing it. So, I feel for these kids coming out of college who maybe get a job at Google or get a job at Facebook or one of these fine companies here and say, okay, welcome aboard. Here's your Zoom login. Zoom had some fun stuff in the beginning. Everyone can wear pajamas or shorts underneath the shirt and tie. But I think the heart of business is really the collaboration and the team environment. And the best things, and Jessica said it, and so did Susan, these co-working spaces, especially the nonprofit based, are really community hubs. Okay, we have a tremendous social movement going on right now. We can have tremendous impact based in these hubs, and that's exciting.
So you alluded to it. You're like my seed planner for all the questions today, Mike. But like, how today we enter phase 2, right? We're entering phase 2 in Virginia. Everyone's been really anxious to kind of really go through the phases, and it's like, when is it over? But there's also this apprehension and concern that I think continues to loom of, okay, we move forward, but is there a point in the fall or winter where we start to move backwards? So as we think about the interest and desire to get back to work, how do we also think about that for the physical spaces? Like, what are the things that you're thinking about? How is that impacting the design and the build?
Yeah, great question. So, as I alluded to earlier, we have a bit of a pause now, so we can work with the engineers and the designers and the architects, and really supply chains is real important. to look at sourcing options. So people want to go back to work. They want to feel safer and comfortable. So what does that mean? That means probably minimal shared surfaces. That probably means altering existing spaces. Okay, so we used to have cubicle farms. How many people can I get in a production area? That's going to change. It might mean taking small conference rooms and putting them into single offices. Okay, designated delivery areas, floor markings, as Susan mentioned, hand sanitizing. And then as we get further along into the mechanical requirements of these spaces, that's a whole nother avenue and opportunity, quite frankly, to purify and sanitize our space. That might mean air purification systems, UV lighting, so some things that'll give people and really give the environment a better chance to be successful. As we know from the beginning of COVID, things change daily, but we've learned a lot more about it. And we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. Is there going to be a rebound of it? But we can put some things in place to make our employees, the community, these co-working spaces feel more comfortable and attack this in a proactive manner.
Yeah, I had a couple things to add to this and some images that I put on a slide, Adrian. It should be the second one. But just talking a little bit, Mike, to piggyback off of you for the health and wellness considerations that, we're talking about how we all want to return to the office, but probably not the same office. And for people to feel comfortable, there's a variety of different things that we should be considering, like a combination of, spreading people out, more cleaning, stricter sick policies. But for co-working, this could mean reduced density in meeting spaces in public areas, like you already mentioned, creating smaller separated seating, incorporating biophilic elements and plants to promote stress reduction and comfort. And this could also be used as a barrier to protect open office workers too. And then access to the outdoors and natural light and fresh air. And then the next slide has a couple of images about materials and wayfinding and what we're considering there. So reducing the amount of public circulation paths, and for co-working, this could mean that there's a barrier between entering the public space and the private space where you're required to be a member to have access to different areas. Material selection, this is an obvious one, but choosing materials that are non-porous and fabrics and furniture that can withstand rigorous cleaning. And then everybody's talking about restroom considerations with touchless faucets and foot pedals and designing with bright, clean finishes.
And I like to add something to what Jessica and Mike said. We have learned so much from the original surge that we are going to be far more prepared when or if there is another one. With the close record keeping that the health agencies are doing, and we're becoming more and more aware of what they are delivering and information, we're going to be much better prepared and understand how to handle it, where before it was like a pace of just, oh my gosh, is this happening? What do we do? Now we understand. So I don't think the same panic that happened before will happen again. We'll see it coming, and we'll be able to, we'll know what to do. We'll know whether to send some people home or manage it differently than the panic that originally happened. I think we're much better off with experience and education.
Mm-hmm. We've talked a little bit about, like, a lot of our conversation has been quasi-centered on CVA, right? New build, what do you think about when you're going into a new build? But there are existing spaces, and I think about, my previous roles and how we all sat very open and all together, and a lot of people and sharing of desks and all of those types of things. And the desk sharing in particular is very prominent in co-working spaces. What are we thinking about is there a redesign conversation that is happening? What are we doing with these spaces to be ready for these things we just talked about from a health and wellness standpoint? Susan, I see your head going, so let's start over.
Well, as we keep mentioning over and over, the importance of having furniture that's flexible. So really, there was that panic of, oh my gosh, we've got all these open systems, and what are we going to do with them? They're no longer relevant, which is not really true. Adrian, if you can show my image 4, we just went through this in our office yesterday. In fact, so I snapped some shots because we had a benching situation. And when that slide comes up, you can see how we separated it and put them in different areas. We're just having to kind of respace plan within our office. We don't have a huge amount of square footage, so we had to be creative. But that's what your A&D community is here to help you with. And and a lot of our clients are already using panel heights that are 64 inches high and some higher. We've got one that just installed there it is. That's our office from yesterday. So, yes. So you can see, just going back, how we broke it basically in half. And that's the advantage of having flexible furniture. And then you can see the 2 bottom sides where we have now 2 separate stations. And we'll have additional screens put in place for, traffic pattern going back and forth, because we are in an open space. But, and we're going to be able to come back to work just fine. Going back to several of our clients that have panel systems and have a variation of the cubicle farm, they are, what we're doing for them is providing one-way areas for traffic patterns and one-way staircases. So they're still able to go back. Some of them are slowly going back. I think we've all heard about the 50-50, 50% coming back on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, another shift. So we're figuring it out. So I think there was a fear at the beginning that, oh my God, we've these benching systems, we've got these cubicles, it's not going to work. It will work. We will adjust, and that's what this furniture has been about for years, is flexibility. And I know Mike has seen it with the way that the private offices are being used now, and to his point, how conference rooms will be used. So I think that the new projects coming out definitely have an advantage because we've learned so much, but that doesn't mean we can't quickly come up with some good solutions and safe solutions for the current cubicle farms and such. But I do agree with you, Mike. I think we'll see a shift in how those will be used in the future.
Yeah. If I could show an example, not of the open office area, but more of the public amenity spaces that people interact with, there should be a slide, Adrian, that shows a before and after comparison. And there's just a few considerations that we're talking about within our office when we are adjusting existing space. We've talked about reducing density in meeting rooms and amenity areas such as the pantry or the cafe, zoning areas for public meetings away from open office space. Paths are better delineated, and then encouraging the use of stairs instead of elevators is a big one. One more slide over, Adrian, and that should be it. Perfect. That's great. We may need to zoom in a tad, but on the left-hand side, you've got the before, and then on the right-hand side, this is an after diagram with a few considerations that we're looking at for this particular project that we're working on. So this is a lobby space that both the public and the folks who work in this building use often. So for this example, we're reducing the density in the open areas. We're considering the approach of a guest to the front desk and what that would look like. We're including biophilia with a plant wall at the entry. We're reconfiguring the conference space. If you can see, the previous conference space had training tables with chairs, and the after diagram shows individual chairs with laptop arms that are spaced apart. Potentially adding transparent dividers between fitness equipment. So this example has a small fitness center in it. And then adding an additional hand washing station outside of the restroom area. So even if folks, they're not using the restroom, they may just want to go wash their hands after an event or after they've worked out, we're adding that outside of the restroom. So this is just an easy before and after diagram of what we're talking through with our clients.
Jessica, what's interesting about this, when I look at, if Adrian, we can go back to it for a second. When I look at your before and after, we focused a lot of our conversation about the working spaces, but you highlight an important part here, which is those common spaces that, every space has a larger conference room or some kind of place for meeting and presentation, and thinking about the reconfiguration of that. I see very clearly the 6 feet apart in the after. How did that impact? How did this design impact the capacity of those spaces?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell that the capacity definitely went down. And with our clients, we're talking about a phased approach. Maybe you're removing some of the chairs and putting those in storage for a certain amount of time and then phasing them back in and bringing them back in. In this scenario, for this particular large meeting space, we replaced the tables and chairs with a different piece of furniture that had a laptop table and spaced them apart so folks could have everything they needed right there with the laptop table and not feel like they were missing out on anything that was there previously, but it definitely took the occupancy down.
Is the client thinking about like a different incorporation of technology then? I know I think about, just even in some of my previous work, right, the number of meetings that you would host in these larger spaces and not wanting to then have to have the same meeting 5 times just to get, folks there. How is your client thinking about that, if you can share?
Most of our clients are, they're still moving forward with the use of things like Zoom meetings. So even if they can't get everybody in the same room, they have the technology to be able to get everybody there, if you will, virtually. That way they're not hosting multiple shifts of the same meeting. So it's a combination.
Okay. That's good.
I think both, Jessica and Susan brought up great points on how do you approach a existing space or a new space. So typically in the design environment, for years you'd hear form follows function. Okay, what's the function of the space, and then how do I design it? I think in today's new environment we have a new variable, and that's going to be safety, sanitation, COVID. How do we address these things? So that changes the typical design mentality of, here's my function, let's fit it in there from a space planning perspective. So we all need to look at it as a collaborative effort, not expecting Susan, tell us how it's done, but more, let's look at all of the professionals. And that includes, designers, architects, engineers, suppliers. Suppliers, as we've seen in the national level, have been tremendously innovative. And how do we work at it as a team, not to come up with a single spec that fits the new environment, but how do we provide multiple options to address this new design formula, really, that we need to incorporate.
Yeah, that's good. You mentioned earlier, Mike, about the HVAC systems when we were talking about some of the things that put into place. I know that has been a big conversation, and so I did not want to skip or do our attendees a disservice by not addressing it. There's been, I think we've all seen the map of the restaurant and the air conditioner and the spread and all of that. Like, let's talk about that. What's the real deal? Tell us what's real.
This piggybacks a little bit on what we were just talking about. So the CDC, even though there's ever-changing guidelines that come out, has still maintains that a virus does not spread, or a virus spreads person to person, and it's unlikely that it will be dispersed through an HVAC system. With HVAC systems, ASHRAE, who is the guideline, the Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning, they put out the standards that engineers use to design HVAC systems. Okay, so these HVAC systems are based upon occupancy, how many people we have in there, and Jessica just alluded to that. They're based upon use type, office environments, restaurants, sporting facilities, and they kind of balance how much heating and cooling we're putting in and how much air exchange, which is real important, that goes into it. So as we talked, we're going into these existing spaces and reconfiguring them to meet the new design challenges. Along with that, it's not a furniture, fixture, drywall solution. Also, the HVAC system needs to be evaluated, because as we change the amount of people in a space or the use type of a space, we also need to address how that HVAC system operates. Now, within the HVAC system itself, that means, do I have proper ventilation? Do I have proper filtration? Okay, so filtration, and they're doing a lot of research on this right now. There's different types of filters, and they're called MERV ratings. Basically, how much air can I filter, and to what level of particles can I take out? We can increase filter ratings in HVAC systems. There's studies that come out that says let's look at UV lighting in HVAC systems, and there's different types of UV lighting, UVC in particular, that's used for like hospital sterilization of tools and equipment. That's been a real popular and continuing to study option for how do we treat these things? What viruses can we kill? And as the virus or COVID mutates, the science and research will also need to be addressed. So HVAC systems are real important. I think the moral of it is, to date, there is no proven study that says, I'm going to cough into an air return and everyone in the office is going to get it. It's still person to person, but there are steps we can take within the existing systems. And then it's very important that we evaluate these systems as we change the environment, look, feel, quantity, people.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. From the design side, I just feel like there's a heightened sense of awareness for health and wellness, and indoor air quality being a really big part of this. And moving forward, I just see a higher level of design for how air is brought into the building and circulated. And these are technologies that people are going to start to pay a lot closer attention to.
That's good. That's good. So, speaking of people coming into the building, I'll ask one more question, and then we'll flip over to Q&A. Let's talk about some of the health and wellness when folks are coming in. So we've seen some of the temperature checks. It's like some of the standard things that we're seeing across anything are the temperature checks. Some folks are doing some kind of thermal scanning. How effective is that, and how should it be implemented in spaces like these?
Well, I'll take that one to start with. Okay, so when all this, beginning of 2020, who thought plexiglass would be the best business to be in this year, and Zoom too. So, we're seeing plexiglass everywhere. And, again, it goes back to safety. I think that for offices that are bringing in, some of these high rises, co-working spaces and such, having a way to check, and there's the temperature of someone is becoming more and more critical. And there's daily we are seeing tools to do that, where it's infrared and it's reading on a computer screen. So we're going to see more and more of that. And I think by the fall, we'll have a pretty good grip on those type of tools. And I'm seeing the prices come down a bit from where I saw them in the very beginning. So I think those are going to become something of a norm. And the plexiglass screens, I think we're going to see those for a while, at least a year. My concern is what's going to happen to them after we do come up with a vaccine. We're going to have all this plastic, all these clear shields out there. But if Adrian can show my image 5 on, there's a different type of screening, like for collaboration. I think there's been a lot of discussion about how do we collaborate with each other? How do we sit down with each other? Because those were spaces that became so popular. We have it in our office. And we can do that with screens, and that's the one. Yeah. So you can see where this was creatively separated, but it's a gathering spot. And it's, there's a sense of safety with those screens. So instead of where you saw a lot of sectional sofas all together in a group, now we're breaking them up, and we can do this with these screens. And you can control the fabric that's on them, or if they're whiteboards. There's so many choices now to make them aesthetically pleasing and not so daunting. I think in the beginning, and it's certainly as a designer, and I'm sure Jessica can relate to this, when we saw all those clear screens just flooding the market, it's like, hey, how do we make these, thankfully they're transparent to a certain extent, but it's still not the most aesthetically pleasing. It's really a visual cue. There is a sense of protection, but with us wearing masks, that's also providing a good bit of protection, that if you didn't have a shield, if each person has the mask, that's taking care of the issue of exchanging what's coming out of our mouth, that vapor that we keep seeing on all these webinars. So I think that, yes, we'll have screening. I think the other type of screening too is like what we're on right now, Zoom. I'm not so sure that that's going to go away, or if it should. I'm finding that even I'm on a conference call and my business partner's in her office on the same Zoom call with others, so we're not having to go to a conference room. We can bring someone in, especially for our Indianapolis office or Richmond, when we're connecting all three offices. This has been wonderful. So I think one aesthetic thought that a lot of the A&D community is going to have to start thinking about is the background, because as you've seen, there's now ratings out there like, what was your background rated? So, what are people seeing in the background? And so I think there's going to be a lot of responsibility for the A&D community in this, as well as Mike's industry too, because you've got to construct it for us. So I think when we think of screens, there's a plethora of different types of screens that we'll be dealing with in this new age of safety.
Anybody else want to jump in on that before we jump out to the audience?
Yeah, I just say, Susan, that I think the standard temperature checks, masks, those are the minimum requirements we need to do. I think as business owners and as employees, we need to look at how we're handling sick time, how we're handling people that maybe need some more flexibility in their work, whether it be their own illness or illnesses of family members. When this first started, we all had a panic. I got someone in my family who's sick. How do I deal with that? In the construction industry, it's extremely difficult because we have crews that travel job to job and subcontractors that travel job to job. And if you have a guy who tested positive on one site, we can't let him on another site. And it's a challenging situation that I think needs some flexibility. I also think it needs some personal responsibility to yourself and to your employer to say, hey, I don't feel good today. I got a text last night from one of my employees. I'm not feeling too good. Stay home. We'll get you paid. Let's focus on your health. And as employers, we need to support our employees for that. And we want them to feel open and connected enough that they can be honest with us, because that's what's really going to stop transmission. So.
Okay.
All right.
All right, Adrian, do we have any questions? And as a reminder, guys, please feel free to put questions in the chat. There's a Q&A button. We've got a few more minutes and would love to, hopefully we did answer your questions, but if we didn't, this is the time to ask them. You've got a great group here to be able to answer those for you.
Yeah, just as a reminder, throw your questions into the Q&A or into the chat. I don't see any popping up just yet, but we're going to give a minute or two for people to throw their questions in if they're typing now.
Rasheeda, I can add something here. So we the basis of this, and with CVA, we're talking about co-working spaces. So as Jessica alluded earlier, the whole office environment and leasing requirements, size of space to number of people, that's ever changing right now. And nobody knows what it's going to look like. So somebody who used to have 10,000 square feet and have 50 people in their office may only have the capacity for 25 now. So as companies and owners and people look at their spaces, the co-working space becomes even more attractive as an option. where they can work with CVA or work with other, organizations to say, this is how much space I need, and have the flexibility to grow and shrink with the ever-changing guidelines right now. So it's really a positive thing. And again, it provides that flexibility. It provides resources. It provides the collaboration and team environment, while giving you the flexibility to be in a 2,000 square foot space or a 10,000 square foot space. If you have a lease for a 10,000 square foot space, and all of a sudden you can put half the people in there now, that affects, obviously from a business standpoint, your pro forma and how you can operate and your profitability, where the new co-working model really provides some positive impact and some flexibility during these challenging times.
Yeah.
So we do have a question that just came in. It says, moving towards post-COVID-19, do you feel that redesign should be the focal point that includes the safety measures? And if so, how costly do you think these designs will be that you showed?
I can speak to some of the ones I showed, and then Jessica, I think you had some. And the redesign, like with my office and some of the decals that we showed, are not terribly expensive. I mean, we did have to put a little more expense than we expected, and recabling, because you've got to bring your IT and your phone and all that if you're creating another space for workers. But it's not overwhelming, especially if you bought flexible furniture to begin with and invested in that, then you're ahead of the game. So you're looking at just reconfiguration, which you've already done the big expense. Reconfiguration doesn't have to be terribly expensive. So Jessica, I know you probably have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been studying this over the past week or so, just with incorporating more flexible furniture types into spaces maybe that didn't have people working in them before, and folks want to utilize some space and reallocate it to people who may not feel comfortable working at their desk, but rather work somewhere else. So there's a lot of options out there. And I think the second part of this question, if I'm reading the same one, is asking about leasing options too. I know that many furniture manufacturers provide leasing options, and Susan, you're well versed in this, I'm sure, better than I am, but it's something that we've been looking into for our clients too. They want to know if there's a shorter term solution, not the marathon solution, that they can employ right now to get us over the hump and make sure everyone is feeling safe and they can do their work productively. But leasing is definitely an option.
Yeah, and that's always been out there, and that is an option, absolutely.
And they talk about cost of redesign, I think was one of the basis of the question. And I think redesign is our obligation as business owners to address the current environment. And I also look at redesign as an investment in the company. And we're also, that's the investment we make so that our employees feel comfortable, okay, that our employees are productive, that we can continue to operate. And that investment in an ever-changing world is no different than upgrading technology. It's no different than, creating new spaces or using new things that are going to make you a more attractive, better company. In this case, it's going to make us a safer company. In which case, I'm investing in not only the office and the bricks and mortar, but the employees. It's no different than providing better healthcare benefits. You're providing them something that makes them want to work there. So I don't look at it as a cost. Is this going to cost me a lot of money to make people safe? I look at it as an investment into people and into environments.
Great point. All those great points.
Adrian, I think I've seen a couple of questions come in. Look. There's a question posed about whether there would be a benefit to co-working spaces on having an on-site healthcare professional, even if it's just temporary. I think it's an interesting proposal. It goes to, what are the health and wellness options that a space offers, and probably be up to the clients more than anything. But, what are you guys' thoughts?
I think that's a great point, and especially for larger companies that have campuses, having a nurse come in, and again, going back to what Mike just said, is about making sure that the employees feel safe coming to work. And I just wondered, that's a great point. If there's a service that could be hired on whether it's a weekly basis or monthly basis to check in with the employees. I know that there's a lot, and we provided as well, like someone to chat with if feeling not quite yourself, which a lot of us haven't in the last couple of months, and reach out to just to chat and say, here's what I'm thinking. Am I off base? It's so. I think that's a great idea of a service that that a lot of companies should, and especially if you have large businesses. I know Capital One. I visited one of theirs, and they had, and of course they're huge, but they had like a little clinic on campus. So
Yeah, we've worked with clients. I'm thinking of a client that we worked with recently in Alexandria that they had a wellness director on staff that would do a whole bunch of things. So that not a clinician necessarily, but this particular person had a team, and they would run everything from fitness classes during the day. This organization allowed their staff and associates to take time out of their day to join fitness classes, to food program stuff, and just run a holistic health program for the organization, which was a huge benefit to folks looking to join this organization. They knew this is a marketed thing that everyone knew about. And like, if I join this company, they have this program. So I think it's something that people will probably look closer at moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of that new formula, Rasheeda. So we talked about form following function, and now we have other considerations. How do we design? And part of that design in today's world is how do we support the physical, social, and emotional needs of our employees, or our tenants, or our people who occupy these spaces. And while not every small business can afford that, there are options, and telehealth is a new great option out there, and it's providing resources. And I think in order to figure out that formula, it's going to take a collaborative effort of everybody here, and suppliers and vendors and owners, to really develop a space that meets the needs of everyone.
Yeah, it's a great point. Adrian, I am not seeing any more questions at this point, and I know we are almost at time. Unless you've got something else, I think we can. Oh wait, what do we? This is a good.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
So we have another question that came in and said, I'm hearing a lot of discussion around employees, but what about clients? It seems like we will have to market differently to attract new clients and replace. Some thoughts on that?
I can speak to that. We work with a client, Town Bank, and of course they're very concerned about their clients and their members coming into their branches, and making sure that everybody feels safe. So yeah, that's what the shields are for, the mask, offering it at the mask, the hand sanitizer, offering it at the door, the signage, again, like the protocols that we're talking about putting in place for communication tools. It's so important to make sure that the clients know when they're coming in, what your expectations are. And it gives them a level of safety. If they know that coming into your space that you require the mask, that gives them like, okay, sure, because I want to wear my mask, and if I come in, I don't want to feel funny because you're not. So I think more people are trying to be more client friendly and concerned about making sure that they know we're here as a safe space for you. Just like as employers, we're trying to do that for employees. Companies are also trying to create that safe space for clientele.
I would also add that, and when you think about co-working spaces, your clients are your members, as well as the folks that are coming in to utilize the business. One of the things that I have seen be very successful is the focusing of the focus not being on the space, but the focus being about the community that it builds. And that goes back to like what we talked about earlier with CVA pivoting to do the programming and the Thrive Accelerator. Like you're building a sense of community. I don't know if you guys seen it, but the Broad has done a phenomenal job. They are really rooted in their community, and they have continued that even in an online environment. So I've seen them have virtual work sessions where I think they're on Zoom, but everybody's literally just doing whatever work they would have done in the space, still having some of their happy hours. And that sense of community is what's going to bring you back. If it's just a space, then I can find a space anywhere. But if it's a space that brings some value to me, that really resonates in a different way. And so I would challenge folks to think about what is the community that you're building, and how does your space complement your community, rather than just, I've got this really cool space and we've got all the things in place, but what is it that makes people want to come back there?
So I know we're right at time. We have one more question that I'll throw out there. This is more to you guys as leaders of your organizations, but will flexible workplaces and flexible work style policies become the new popular talent recruiting tool?
That's a really good one. I'll take that one. It's a two-part question, flexible workspaces. And as a recruitment tool, yes, definitely. Space was moving that direction anyways. Pre-COVID, the design of workspace was already going in the direction of providing people with multiple different areas in which they could work, with different postures, different meeting spaces, all kinds of things. So I definitely think that will continue. But I think the second part of the question was, will flexible work policies impact recruitment? And our organization, I'll give an example from us. We've started asking our staff, moving forward, as we phase back into the office, is working from home permanently something that you want to evaluate, and what would your ideal schedule look like? Starting to get an idea from our staff of what's working for them and what's not working for them, and what they may want to continue moving forward. And if I were to look at other organizations, I've heard of others doing the same thing. And as we're recruiting new staff, we're anticipating that this will be a discussion point.
That's good. Well, these are great questions. Thank you all for taking the time. Thank you to each of our panelists for your insight. I think this has helped folks just get some more comfort. In terms of follow-up, so we did record this session. The link for it will go out to all registered participants. So if you know someone who registered but wasn't able to attend, please let them know they'll still be able to watch it. And then we will also be sharing that. It'll be on the Collaboratory of Virginia's pages. Check their LinkedIn, Instagram, and social media. I will also be sharing it on the 350 Group LinkedIn page if you would like to see the replay. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I think that when we send it out, we'll probably share some of our contact information. So if you'd like to talk further, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. But thank you guys, and have an awesome weekend, because it is Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.